party and asked them if the president or a surrogate would join us for this program. So now we turn to Joe Walsh. He's one of the three candidates running against Republican President Donald Trump for the party's nomination for president. Mr. Walsh served in Congress from 2001 to 2013. He was a Tea Party supporter. More recently, he's been the host of a conservative radio talk show heard in many cities around the country. He joins us from Chicago. Congressman Walsh, good to have you with us.
Hey, Ray, great to be with you all. Thank you.
We'll begin our questioning from America in One Room with Vasantha. Vasantha, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm from representing Group 12. Thank you for taking my question, Congressman. In Europe, especially like UK, universal coverage works very successful. Why can't we do it that covers here, like a government-paid basic coverage for each and every one? What is it stopping that to do things like that, to do it?
Thank you for your question, and it's an important question. I'll probably say that a bunch. Look, America should make sure, we should make sure in this country that everybody of need, their health care costs are taken care of. We can't cover everybody, and we can't afford to cover everybody. This is an issue where the Democrats clearly have an opinion, and we should respect that opinion, kind of like the UK, that everybody should be covered. If there's anybody out there that supports that, I would simply ask, how are we going to pay for it all? But generally, my party, the Republican Party, is afraid to talk about health care because what we really should be looking at in this country is always take care of those people in need. But the rest of us in America, we have to begin thinking about and paying for our own day-to-day health care costs. Somehow we got to get to that point, because I don't believe this great country that's already $22 trillion in debt, and I'll bet you've got kids and you've got grandkids. My God, I don't want to burden them with an even bigger debt. We got to figure out how to pay for all of this health care for all of us, thank God, who are living longer and longer and longer.
Well, Congressman, any platform planks, any suggestions on how to widen coverage and make sure that those people who aren't able to cover the costs right now can do so? What are you suggesting?
Yeah, I think what we need to do, again, instead of moving in the direction, and I respect the direction the Democrats are going, I have more respect for that than I do for my Republican Party, because we don't talk about this issue. We've got to get to a place where most of the American people have what's called universal coverage, universal catastrophic coverage, where their major health care costs, any catastrophic costs, are covered. But then for our day-to-day health care costs, it's kind of like, auto insurance. We don't use our automobile insurance when we go to get gas or go to get our oil changed. But if we can make sure that our catastrophic health care expenses are paid for, and again, this is really important, all Americans of need and those Americans who have chronic conditions, diabetes and kidney failure, their costs always need to be taken care of. But until most of us able-bodied Americans assume our day-to-day health care costs, we'll never get that taken care of.
Vasantha, thanks for your question. Jody's next. Jody, welcome.
Hi, on behalf of Group 9, I'd like to ask, how could a $15 an hour minimum wage adversely affect the cost of living?
Jody, thank you for the question. Look, again, an important question. I don't want my federal government telling businessmen and women, especially small businessmen and women throughout this country, what they have to pay their employees. Every time we raise the minimum wage, one of two things happens. The people that we're trying to help, right, the minimum wage workers, they either lose their jobs, or businesses go out of business, or businesses have to raise the cost of whatever product they're making. I'm much more comfortable, Jody, leaving this up to states and localities. If certain states want to raise their minimum wage to $23 an hour, let them. If there are certain municipalities that want to raise their minimum wage to whatever, let them. The beauty of our country, Jody, is that we have 50 states. 50 laboratories where we can experiment with all of these policies. I'm much more comfortable having states experiment with the minimum wage increase than having some decree from on high from Washington, D.C.
Jody, thanks for your question. We move next to Stacy. Stacy, welcome.
Hi, I represent Group 33. Could more diplomacy and/or financial assistance to South and Central American countries help deter those seeking asylum from those countries? And if so, what might that look like?
Yes. To answer your question, yes. Look, the United States should be the beacon around the world for democracy and opportunity. We always welcome people coming here to claim asylum. The more we can help promote, Stacy, the more we can help promote our values around the world, freedom, intolerance, and democracy, the better. The more we can help other countries around the world improve the conditions in their country, well then yes, I guess it makes sense there'd be less people coming to America to claim asylum. We look at what's happening in our own hemisphere right now. We've got good, decent people from Central American countries flooding up into our country to claim asylum. They have a right to come into our country and claim asylum, but look at what the Trump administration is doing, actually cutting off aid that would help El Salvador and Guatemala and other Central American countries. We should be helping these countries with aid and helping these countries with resources so that the quality of life in those countries is better, so that people don't feel the need to have to come to our border and our shores, though we always welcome them.
Stacy, thanks a lot. Vikram's next. Vikram.
How's it going, Congressman? My question today is, when Donald Trump became president, he withdrew the U.S. from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. If we have remained in the TPP, would it have benefited the United States, and if so, how?
I think so generally. Look, Donald Trump got elected, he said America first, but that America first became America only. And that's not right. We've got to lead when it comes to every single issue that the entire planet faces, like climate change, an issue like China. Because we're no longer in the TPP, it restricts what we can do with China. China is a bad actor. They cheat. They cheat against every country on the planet. So what did Donald Trump do? Donald Trump said, I'm going to go after China all by myself. Well, China cheats against all the other countries in the world as well. What we should have done is form a worldwide coalition to deal with China. The TPP might have helped that, but bring countries together and address the threat that China is. But instead, look who's bearing the brunt, the cost of our trade war with China, because Trump said it's us against them. The American consumer, the American farmer, American businessmen and women are paying a price right now. We've got to be part of the world. We've got to lead the world. And the only way we can do that is to lead with these multi-country coalitions.
Vikram, thanks a lot for your question. Liana's
Thank
next.
you.
Liana, welcome.
I'm representing Group 2, and our question is, no matter what healthcare system we come up with, private pay, different pay system, public pay, how can we create a healthcare system not beholden to the outright influence of the insurance industry?
It's a great, great question. How do we do that? How do we make sure our healthcare system is not beholden to the insurance companies or beholden to the government? Our healthcare system should be beholden to us, period. And how do you do that? I think you do that by, again, putting us more in charge of our healthcare costs. I mean, right now, let's be honest, all of us, I know it's really easy to say, have insurance pay for it, or have this government program pay for my health care costs. We don't feel the brunt of those costs. So the costs continue to go up. We're like prisoners right now to these insurance companies. And I would argue that too many Americans are prisoners to the government when it comes to our healthcare system. I apologize if I sound like a broken record, but here's the problem, right? It's a good thing. More and more and more of us are living longer and longer and longer. That's a great thing. Amen. We should celebrate it. We're living into our 80s and 90s and beyond, and generally we're healthy. That's wonderful. But we've got to figure out how to pay for the health care costs for all of these Americans living longer and longer. Right now, that's the biggest single line item in our federal budget. It's the fastest growing line item in our federal budget. It will bankrupt this country, not defense spending, not foreign aid. Health care costs for the American people living longer and longer, it will bankrupt this country until we have an adult conversation. The Democrats want to tell you that the government will do it, and Republicans want to tell you that the insurance companies will take care of it. Either way, it's a fool's errand. We've got to have an adult conversation and talk about how we can pay for more of our day-to-day costs so that we can take care of those people in need.
Okay. Who's next? Are you Alan?
Thank you. Yes, I am.
Great. Alan, what group are you from?
I'm representing Group 40.
Okay.
There's a question about immigration. Would it make sense to address immigration by having a global alliance of countries that would create global policies so that all nations can support equitable distribution of immigrants?
It's a nice thought, but I don't like it. Only because of this. Look, every nation is sovereign, and we are a sovereign nation. And if a nation doesn't defend its borders and secure its borders, it's not sovereign. I always want to deal with and relate with and have relations with countries all over the world. But when it comes to immigration into this country, that's an American decision. That's up to the American people. How many people we let in here, who we let in here. The fact that we don't want, right, we understand why people want to come here, and we want people to come here, but you have to come here legally. I don't want any other country around the world playing a role in who we let in and how many people we let in. We, the American people, we need to have that debate. And through our duly elected representatives, we, as a sovereign nation, we have to decide what our immigration policy is.
You know, Alan, it's a very interesting question. And we saw in real time how that can work or not work. Because when refugees started streaming across the Mediterranean, the European Union, a group of 27 countries, tried to make a joint policy on how to handle an unprecedented flood of people from North Africa and the Middle East. And they had different desires. They had different desires for goals and outcomes. They had different policies. And even though the 27 of them are bound together in this treaty and supposedly share a lot of outlook on this, they couldn't come to a joint agreement, and it nearly split the European Union. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great question and a big, big challenge. I have to get some people who are asking questions on behalf of their group to make themselves known to the floor director and head to the aisles. Joan from Group 16, Ron from Group 6, Eric from Group 12, and Sarah from Group 2. Kamal is our next questioner. Kamal, welcome.
Hi, I'm representing Group 2. What infrastructure and incentives can we put into place now to become self-reliant, build our economy, and create a clean energy future?
Boy, that's I think that question right there, along with the questions about healthcare and the climate, are the most important things we're facing. Look, the world is changing, and America and the rest of the world has some big decisions to make. I'm a conservative. What does that mean? In my worldview, that means I want my government doing a few things. I don't want my government doing too many things, but I want them doing a few things well. When it comes to our basic infrastructure in this country, we haven't done a damn thing since like the 50s or early 60s to improve our infrastructure, and our roads and our bridges and our highways are breaking down now because of it. This is a role for government. Protecting our environment, helping to protect our environment is a role for government. I wish that Republicans and Democrats could come together on this issue of infrastructure tied into the issue of the environment. Almost every question that I'm being asked today, and maybe you feel it this way, and I want to commend everybody for coming together this weekend, because the country is divided, and I appreciate your role in helping to heal that divide. But Republicans and Democrats right now are so divided that they can't even sit down at a table in a room and talk about basic infrastructure and how we're going to pay for it, just like they can't sit together in a room and talk about the climate and how we're going to lead on climate change. If I were elected president, these issues of climate, health, and our basic infrastructure are issues where I would bring experts and both parties together.
Thanks a lot for your question, Kamal.
Thank you.
Jolene is next. Jolene, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome, Congressman, and we appreciate you joining us today. Group 17's question is, how should we best handle the undocumented workers that are currently in our country?
Well, all right, so overall immigration, look, nobody should be in the country illegally. We should make it easier for people to come into this country legally, permanently and temporarily. So when we talk about undocumented workers in this country, we should make that process easier. And part of the problem is because we need those workers. We need these workers to be able to come in, do the work, go back home. There needs to be, right, a revolving door. That's a process now that is broken, like so much of our immigration system. And I don't know about you, but most of the American people I talk to, when we talk about the issue of immigration, people just throw it all into one basket, and people throw their hands up and say, oh my God, we can't fix it. We have to break this issue of immigration up. And to me, it's pretty simple, right? Strengthen the border. Nobody should be in our country illegally. People coming here to claim asylum, we should be there with open arms to welcome these people and adjudicate their cases as quickly as we can. Undocumented workers, we should make sure that that process is easy and streamlined. And for that line of people that we talk about, the line of people around the world who have been waiting for years and spending a lot of money to come to America legally, my gosh, we got to make that process easier. It takes too damn long, and it's too damn hard to be an American citizen. That's wrong. And we've got to make that process a lot easier and quicker.
Thanks a lot for your question. Next is Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah from Group 2. College isn't right for everyone and can leave people with tremendous debt. A career in the trades can be a much more viable option for many people. What would you do to encourage and support our young people going into trade schools and trade apprenticeships?
If I were there, I'd give you a big kiss right now, because I love this. I probably shouldn't do that, but I would. Because this issue. My God, we've been telling my generation and my kids' generation, right? Everybody has to go to college. Bull! To be happy, to live a fulfilling life, everybody has to go to college. For 30 to 40 years, we've been pounding this into the heads of the American people, young people, and it's wrong. Right now, there are companies, trade companies, manufacturing companies all over this country of ours that can't find people to work. And these jobs are great paying jobs now with great benefits. And a community college education, a trade school education can set you up for life. all I can tell you is, here's a promise, right? Never make a promise. I'll make this promise because I taught at the community college level. And I love community colleges and I love trade schools. If I were in the White House, I would become the biggest advocate for community colleges and trade schools because we don't need, not everybody has to go to college to live a really fulfilling life.
Thanks a lot for your question. Sarah's next. Sarah, great to have you.
That would be Susan.
Susan, excuse me.
Congressman Walsh, hello and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Susan.
I represent Group 16, and we'd like to find out how we can make sure that people have access to life-saving medication, whether they're insured or not, and whether they can afford it or not.
Susan, thank you for the question. You know what? You guarantee it. Plain and simple. What is the number? Something like 1% of the American population incurs about 20 to 30% of the healthcare costs in this country. The top 5%, I think, incur about 50% of them. People with chronic conditions, people with long-term diseases, people at the end of life. Look, this is what I'm talking about, Susan, and this is what's so important. These people never should have to worry. I was in Iowa campaigning about 3 or 4 days ago, a young woman with diabetes. She blew me away with the amount of money she's spending every month, the premium she's paying every single month. Shouldn't be the case. She shouldn't have to worry. But here's the problem. Look, you've got so many Democrats and Republicans who stand in front of you, Susan, and say, we'll take care of everything. Don't worry, I'll take care of that. Free this, free that. Stop that. I'm going to promise you that those people with chronic conditions, those people with astronomical health care costs through no fault of their own, this country is going to take care of that. We're going to take care of them. But the only way we can honestly do that, because I don't want them to worry, the only way we can honestly do that, again, is to change the dynamic of our healthcare conversation in this country. I'm an able-bodied 50-something-year-old, right? I should pay for most of my day-to-day healthcare costs so that those people who have chronic conditions, who have healthcare costs that I couldn't even dream of, don't have to worry. But we've got to have that conversation.
But I think, Congressman, this is a great example of sort of how values can clash. You've made it clear that you don't want the government interposing itself into marketplaces and decreeing things. And I think a lot of people in the room probably are totally down with that. But diabetes, as you mentioned, is a great example. It's off patent. There are a few producers of it, maybe too few, but they set their own price. Would the government then come in and say, sorry, you can't charge that price? Or say, this is what the price of a month's worth of insulin is going to be? How would we set up a mechanism that would take something that's vital care, as you mentioned, and make it affordable for people?
Well, and I would say, Ray, the government has to play a role. I don't want to give the impression that when it comes to health care in this country, the government shouldn't play a role. The government needs to play a role. Look, the government should, guarantee, again, the government should always be there to take care when it comes to health care costs of people in need. First off, there shouldn't be so few producers of insulin. We should do what we can to open up that market. Should do what we can, right, to make this whole process of bringing drugs to the market a hell of a lot easier. The government, in fact, will have to go after pharmaceutical companies to make sure they're in line, to make sure they're not charging the American people idiotic and extreme obscene prices. We should be able to, again, the American people with conditions like this, with acute care like this, should be able to get drugs out of Canada or get drugs anywhere to deal with we've got to open up those markets. Government's got to play a role in opening up those markets.
We go next to Ron. Ron, welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, I represent group number 6, and what we have for you is just a simply hard question. basically, what we want to know is what's your real plan to reduce the national debt? Because the plan we have right now just isn't working.
Hey, Ron, the plan that politicians have now is absolute bull. Republicans and Democrats, and I'm going to give you some honest poop right now. Republicans and Democrats, Obama, Trump, they have no interest in dealing with the debt. They figure almost every politician in Washington, D.C. right now, both political parties, they figure I'll be long gone when my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids have to pay for it. So here I come again. I'm going to come right at you again, America in one room. You could eliminate the entire defense budget tomorrow. Eliminate it all. And that would not do a damn thing about our debt. Wouldn't even touch our debt. The biggest part of our debt right now, by the way, the second biggest part of our federal budget right now, the second biggest part is interest on our debt. The biggest part of our federal budget right now is health care costs for the American people living longer and longer. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The only way we will do anything about our debt is to figure out how to pay for all of these health care costs, to reform Social Security, reform Medicare, and reform Medicaid. Until we get our arms around these entitlements, because this is where the money is, we'll never do anything about our debt. You could tax wealthy people in this country. You could take 100% of what they make. You won't do a thing about our debt. It's the entitlements, and both political parties need to grow up and do something about these entitlements, or they will bankrupt future generations. My kids are in their early 30s, late 20s. None of them think they'll see Social Security. None of them think they'll see Medicare, and they won't. And Medicaid right now, Medicaid is bankrupting most states. That's where it's at. That's what we have to address.
But when you say that word reform, you can't see this room, but there's a fair amount of gray hair in this room. Not everybody, but enough people. Reform just sounds like another word for we're going to cut your benefits. Is it?
Honest answer, maybe not. Do you want to be part of the solution or not? Look, I was in Congress, and I tell people of all ages, you can say, don't touch what's mine. Why do we have a debt problem in this country? Why do we have a government right now that we can't afford? And I want to remind everybody of this. I don't mean to pick on either political party, because both political parties do this. Democrats say, don't you touch my Medicare. And Republicans say, don't you touch the defense budget. Look, the reason we have a government we can't afford is because we have too many Americans who say, don't touch my program. Don't you dare touch my benefit. Here's all I know, Ray, and I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Here's all I know. Right now, Medicare is due to be belly up in the year 2027. That means Medicare is gone in 2027. I'll bet you if I talk to everybody in your room right there that's got gray hair, and I told them, if we don't do anything to Medicare, if we don't do a darn thing, Medicare will be gone in 2027. I bet even the older Americans in your room are going to say, well, gosh, we need to do something about it to save it.
Well, luckily we do have the smartest guy in the room here. That's our final questioner, Eric.
Thanks for the compliment. Appreciate it, and good afternoon, sir. I'm with Group 12, and our question is over immigration, and it is, what is the reason for the lengthy detention of the people illegally crossing the border, and what is a reasonable amount of time to expect for them to be there?
Hey, by the way, Eric, that was a lot of pressure that Ray put on you, calling you the smartest guy in the room. And that meant you needed to come up with a good question, and you did. Look, the people at the border, we're talking about two distinct groups of people. We're talking about people who break our border and come into the country illegally. And then we're talking about people who legally come here to claim asylum. Now, people who legally come here to claim asylum, and by the way, again, they have a legal right to do that. They need to be treated humanely at our border. But right now, it takes a year, sometimes 2 years, to adjudicate their asylum case. That's baloney. That's terrible. Why does it take so long? Again, neither the Republicans or the Democrats want to devote the resources to increase the number of judges right down there at the border to adjudicate these cases faster. If you come into America and you come here from Central America and you're claiming asylum and you're bringing your kids and your family, doggone it, that case should be heard within a month or two. And that month or two until your case is heard, you need to be treated humanely. Republicans and Democrats need to come together. Right now, they're playing political warfare, and they don't want to touch the issue. That's why we have the problem we have right now.
Eric, thank you very much for your question. And Congressman Walsh, thank you very much for your time. Great to have you. One other item before we move to health care, and the Congressman has teed up health care, and your questions have very nicely. I've been asked to make a point